There are moments in life when a person looks around, silently asks the universe a question deep within their soul and wonders, why does it feel like I'm walking through this world alone? Why does it seem like others have support, crowds, laughter, companionship, while I move through life like a lone soldier fighting invisible battles? And in that sacred moment, when the heart aches and the mind wrestles, God whispers a truth most people never understand. The chosen ones walk alone because their calling is too heavy for the crowd, their purpose too deep for the shallow, and their spirit too strong for those who fear the light they carry. My friend, if you feel like you have no one, you are not forgotten, you are set apart. When God marks a person for greatness, He often removes the noise, the distractions, and the unnecessary attachment. Because what He wants to build inside you requires silence, separation, and spiritual sharpening. Many people cry over loneliness, but chosen ones are not lonely. Chosen ones are isolated by design. You're not abandoned. You're being prepared. You're not rejected. You're being refined. You're not overlooked. God is simply hiding you until it's your time to be unveiled. You see, the world loves familiarity. People gather around what they understand, but a chosen one carries an energy, a depth, a spiritual heaviness that ordinary people cannot comprehend. Your presence convicts, your honesty exposes, your spirit disrupts comfort zones, and your calling demands a kind of purity that friendships often contaminate. That is why your circle is small or non-existent. Not because something is wrong with you, but because God removed the wrong people before they could corrupt what He placed inside you. When God calls someone, He does not begin by surrounding them with crowds. He begins by stripping away attachment. Look back at every season where you felt betrayed, abandoned, misunderstood, or excluded. Those weren't accidents. Those were divine separations. God was pruning you. God was protecting you. God was eliminating connections that could not walk with you into the next chapter of your purpose. The chosen ones do not walk with the majority because their destiny is not found where the majority goes. Let me tell you something that will shift your entire perspective. Chosen ones don't have zero friends because they are unlovable. They have zero friends because God refuses to let contamination touch what He has sanctified. Your life is not supposed to look like the lives of ours. Your journey is not supposed to follow the path of the crowd. Your destiny will never be average. And that is why your relationships cannot be average either. God removes the counterfeit so the calling can stand tall. Have you noticed something? Whenever you try to get close to people, something happens. Whenever you start trusting someone, they turn on you. Whenever you begin opening up, they betray you. Whenever you think you found a friend, they disappear. Why? Because God blocks what doesn't align with your destiny. God sees conversations you don't hear. God sees intentions you cannot discern. God sees hearts you cannot read. And when you are chosen, God will never allow anyone near you whose presence can threaten what He is building inside you. Chosen ones are spiritually sensitive. They can feel lies in the atmosphere. They can sense when a person's heart is not pure. They can detect jealousy without a word being spoken. And because of this, most people feel exposed around you. They feel seen. They feel transparent. They feel spiritually naked. They avoid you not because there's something wrong with you, but because the light in you makes the darkness in them uncomfortable. That is why people distance themselves. That is why you get misunderstood. That is why they gossip about you behind your back. They don't know how to handle the presence of someone God has touched. When God marks you, people notice even if they don't understand it. Some envy you, some fear you, some try to imitate you, some try to silence you, but very few want to truly walk with you, because walking with a chosen one requires strength, purity, humility, and purpose qualities most people are not willing to develop. This is why the chosen ones walk alone. Their path is too steep for the weak, too pure for the worldly, and too demanding for the complacent. And let me tell you something, friendlessness is not a curse for the chosen one. It is a divine strategy. God isolates you so he can speak to you without interference. God separates you so you can hear him clearly. God removes people so you can rely on him entirely. God closes doors so you stop knocking and start listening. Every season of isolation is actually a season of revelation. When you are alone, that is when you grow. When you are alone, that is when you transform. When you are alone, that is when you become unshakable. There are people who cannot walk with you because they are too tied to this world. They love gossip, drama, jealousy, competition, and superficial relationships. But you crave depth. You crave truth. You crave purpose. You crave peace. The chosen ones don't fit into normal social circles because normal circles thrive on what chosen ones stay away from. You don't fit in because you're not meant to fit in. You are not built for popularity. You are built for purpose. Some of you keep asking God, why am I alone? Why don't I have friends? And God is asking you, why do you keep looking for people I removed? Why do you keep searching for companionship in a world that cannot hold your spirit? Why do you desire what I already delivered you from? Friendlessness for a chosen one is not emptiness. It is alignment. It is God saying, walk with me first. Talk to me first. Lean on me first. Friends can comfort you, but only God can strengthen you. Friends can listen to you, but only God fully understands you. Friends can support you, but only God can sustain you. When God removes all your human support, it is because he wants you to stand on divine support. He wants your spiritual backbone strong. He wants your identity anchored in him, not in people. Many chosen ones struggle because they keep trying to form friendships with people who were never meant to be part of their spiritual assignment. You are trying to befriend people God hid you from. You are trying to connect with people God disconnected from your life. You are trying to include people God excluded for your protection. Listen to me. God will never allow the wrong person to stay in the life of a chosen one. If they left you, they were never meant to walk with you. One of the hardest truths for a chosen one to accept is this: your spirit is too expensive to be handled by cheap connections. Not everyone deserves access to you. Not everyone deserves your time. Not everyone deserves your heart. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. Not everyone deserves your secrets. Not everyone deserves your presence. God is guarding you because what he placed in you is rare. You see, there are people who want to be around you only to drain you. There are people who want to attach themselves to your strength because they have no strength of their own. There are people who want to benefit from your compassion while offering you nothing in return. And God says, not this time. He will not allow you to be surrounded by leeches, parasites, or manipulators. He will not allow you to be used, drained, or misled. That is why you have zero friends, because God saw the danger before you felt the pain. Being chosen means being separated. Separation is not punishment, it is preparation. God separates you from people so he can separate you from the world. Elevate your thinking, deepen your spirit, and strengthen your character. Some of you are trying to rebuild bridges God burned. Let those bridges burn. Some of you are trying to revive friendships God buried. Let those friendships rest. Some of you are trying to reconnect with people God has clearly removed. Stop trying to breathe life into what God has declared dead. Do you know why your heart hurts when certain people leave you? Because you built your identity around them. You saw them as part of your future, but God saw them as an obstacle, and God will not allow an obstacle to stay in the path of his chosen one. God removed them, not because you don't need love or connection, but because you deserve a higher level of love and connection than what they could offer. The chosen ones walk alone because their spirit is too alert, their mind too deep, their energy too pure. People who live casually cannot walk with someone who lives purposefully. People who live for pleasure cannot walk with someone who lives for calling. People who live for validation cannot walk with someone who lives for God. Your values don't match theirs. Your standards don't match theirs. Your spirit doesn't match theirs. And sometimes God does not give chosen ones friends because he wants their relationship with him to be unbreakable. If God gave you the comfort of companionship too early, you would depend on people more than on him. You would run to them instead of him. You would seek their approval instead of God's guidance. But when you walk alone, you learn to walk with God. You learn to hear his voice. You learn to trust his timing. You learn to rely on his strength. You learn to depend on his presence. You walk differently when you are chosen. You feel differently. You think differently. You are spiritually awake in a world that is spiritually asleep. You are sensitive to things others ignore. You are moved by things others don't feel. You are bothered by things others accept. You see the world through the lens of purpose, not pleasure. And because of that, most people simply cannot understand you. There were seasons in your life when you begged God for just one friend. You cried asking why no one stayed. But God was molding you. God was teaching you. God was strengthening your inner world. God was preparing you to carry assignments that require courage, independence, and spiritual discernment. Some assignments cannot be completed in a crowd. Some battles must be fought alone. Some breakthroughs require isolation. There is a kind of clarity that only comes in solitude. There is a kind of strength that only forms in silence. There is a kind of wisdom that only grows in separation. God hides chosen ones so he can build them in secret before revealing them in public. He hides them from people who would sabotage their growth. He hides them from insecurity, jealousy, and competition. He hides them until they are strong enough to stand alone. Some of you keep asking God, when will I find my people? But let me ask you, how can you find your people when you still haven't fully found yourself? God wants you to know who you are before he brings others into your life. Because if you don't, you will shrink yourself to fit in. You will dilute your purpose to be liked. You will silence your truth to avoid rejection. But chosen ones were not created to shrink, they were created to shine. And shining often requires standing alone. You have to understand that having zero friends is often a sign of spiritual elevation. When God elevates your spirit, he reduces your circle. When God increases your wisdom, he decreases your attachment. When God grows your purpose, he cuts away distractions. The higher you rise, the fewer people can breathe at your altitude. People who cannot breathe where you are going, cannot walk with you where you are headed. There are moments when loneliness feels like a burden, but chosen ones eventually discover that loneliness is not emptiness, it is the birthplace of destiny. Every chosen one must go through a season of isolation before stepping into their assignment. Isolation is God's training ground. It is where he teaches you resilience. It is where he builds your character. It is where he expands your spirit. It is where he deepens your discernment. It is where he prepares you for the weight of the calling. Your life is not ordinary, so your relationships cannot be ordinary. Your path is not common, so your companions cannot be common. God removed wrong people so the right people could eventually come. But before the right people arrive, God needs you to be strong, stable, spiritually grounded, and self-aware. Chosen ones are not meant to be surrounded. They are meant to be followed. People will not understand you now, but they will look up to you later. People may avoid you now, but they will seek your wisdom later. People may distance you now, but they will respect you later. God is preparing you not for friendship, but for leadership. And leaders walk alone before they lead others. When a chosen one walks through life with no companions beside them, it is not because they lack kindness, warmth, or loyalty. It is because God has placed a spiritual weight upon them that only a few in this world could ever carry or even understand. God isolates those He intends to elevate. And that isolation does not always feel like a blessing. Sometimes it feels like a wilderness, a desert, an empty place where your own thoughts echo louder than the voices of the world. But that wilderness is not a place of abandonment, it is a place of transformation. God brings chosen ones to solitude, not to break them, but to shape them into vessels that can hold the magnitude of what He is preparing for them. There is a depth within you that many people cannot handle, a seriousness, a spiritual sensitivity, a discernment that exposes intentions long before words are spoken. People sense this, even if they cannot explain it. They feel examined in your presence, as if God is using your eyes to peer into their motives. They sense a purity in your walk, a discipline in your soul, and a calling around your life. And instead of rising to match your spirit, most simply withdraw, because the light you carry reveals their shadows. God has given you clarity that makes others uncomfortable. God has given you strength that intimidates the weak. God has given you insight that unsettles the deceitful. And so your path becomes narrower and your circle smaller, not because you are unworthy of companionship, but because God is removing anything that cannot hold the weight of your assignment. Chosen ones often experience a spiritual loneliness that goes beyond human language. It is the loneliness of a person who sees the world differently, who feels energy differently, who understands people before they speak, who can sense danger before it arrives, who feels God's hand even in the smallest details of life. That kind of depth cannot be shared with just anyone. It cannot be placed in casual hands. The world is filled with people who seek entertainment, distraction, and superficial connections. But the chosen ones long for truth, purpose, and alignment with God. They are not interested in empty conversations or shallow company. Their hearts crave depth, sincerity, and meaning. And because such qualities are rare, their relationships become rare as well. But let me reveal a deeper mystery. The chosen ones walk alone because God is teaching them how to become whole without depending on the crowd. If God allowed too many people around you, their voices would drown out His voice. Their opinions would weaken your conviction. Their influence would pull you off your spiritual path. God removes people not to leave you empty, but to ensure that His presence is the voice that molds your identity. When you finally learn to stand with God alone, you become unshakable. You become spiritually independent. You become anchored in truth rather than approval. And in this anchoring, God prepares you for a level of assignment that requires an unbreakable spirit. People often assume loneliness means something is wrong, but God sees loneliness as a powerful tool of refinement. When there are no crowds, no companions, no familiar voices to lean on, God becomes your teacher, your comforter, your guide, your protector, your source of wisdom. In isolation, you learn the strength of silence. You learn the beauty of self-reflection. You learn the importance of spiritual growth that is not influenced by the world around you. God removes the noise, so your spirit can finally breathe. He removes the distractions, so your purpose can finally rise. He removes the unnecessary, so the essential can thrive. Many chosen ones carry a spiritual sensitivity that others misinterpret. The world calls you too intense, too serious, too deep, too different, but God calls you set apart. The world says you're difficult to understand, but God says you're uniquely designed for a purpose that requires a rare kind of soul. You were not created to blend in, you were created to stand out. You were not made to follow, you were made to lead. You were not crafted for approval, you were crafted for assignment. And assignments often require solitude. Chosen ones also experience seasons where God hides them from people, not because He wants them to feel forgotten, but because He is protecting them from premature exposure. There are people who would try to sabotage your spirit if they saw your potential too early. There are people who would try to manipulate your calling if they got too close. There are people who would drain your strength if they were allowed access to your heart. So God hides you. God places you under spiritual shelter. He allows you to be unseen, underestimated, overlooked, because your purpose is still growing. Your spirit is still forming. Your wisdom is still maturing. You are being prepared for something that cannot be rushed. And when God hides you, He also shields you from people who come with disguised intention. There are individuals who appear friendly but carry jealousy in their hearts. There are people who smile at you but secretly hope to see you fail. There are people who pretend to love you but secretly resent your strength, your resilience, your clarity. God sees these things long before they reveal themselves. And that is why He keeps you away from them. You are not friendless, you are protected. Another reason chosen ones walk alone is because they carry a different level of empathy, compassion, and responsibility. You feel deeply. You love deeply. You give deeply. You notice things others ignore. You care about things others overlook. And because you give so much, you must be careful who receives from you. God does not want your heart in the hands of those who cannot appreciate it. God does not want your kindness wasted on those who exploit it. God does not want your loyalty placed in people who cannot reciprocate. So He restricts your connections to keep your soul intact. Chosen ones often desire companionship, but not at the expense of their peace. You would rather sit alone in silence than sit in a room full of people who drain your spirit. You would rather walk a lonely path that aligns with God than walk a crowded path that leads you astray. You would rather have no friend than have a fake friend. You would rather be misunderstood by many than misled by one. That is the nature of a chosen one. You do not chase relationships. You do not beg for acceptance. You do not compromise for belonging. You wait for what aligns with God. And here is a truth many chosen ones do not realize. Your spirit is being prepared to influence people, not accompany them. You are being molded into some others will look to for guidance, strength, and wisdom. But before God allows you to guide others, He guides you through solitude. Before He allows you to speak to crowds, He makes you comfortable hearing only His voice. Before He allows people to rely on you, He teaches you to rely solely on Him. Isolation is not the end of your story, it is the training ground for the impact you will one day make. Chosen ones also walk alone because they are often misunderstood. You speak differently. You think differently. You move differently. Your priorities are not the priorities of the world. While others chase attention, you chase purpose. While others chase validation, you chase truth. While others chase status, you chase spiritual depth. This difference sets you apart, and being set apart means stepping into a kind of emotional, mental, and spiritual maturity that many cannot match. But let me tell you something powerful. The chosen ones are never truly alone. They feel isolated in the physical sense, but spiritually, they walk with God in a way most people will never experience. The absence of friends makes room for the presence of God. The silence of solitude amplifies His guidance. The removal of people increases the clarity of His voice. You develop an inner world so rich, so strong, so deeply rooted in God that no human relationship could ever replace it. You become spiritually independent, emotionally resilient, mentally sharp, and purpose-driven. There will come a time when everything God has been building within you will be needed. A time when your wisdom will guide others. A time when your strength will protect others. A time when your clarity will uplift others. A time when your experiences will serve others. And when that time arrives, you will look back and understand why God kept you alone. not to punish you, but to prepare you, not to starve you emotionally, but to feed you spiritually, not to silence you, but to deepen your voice, not to keep people away from you, but to keep you close to Him. Chosen ones have zero friends because God Himself fills the space where others would stand. God becomes your confidant. God becomes your companion. God becomes your protector. God becomes your source. And in time, when you have grown into the strength He designed for you, He will send people, not many, but the right ones. People who add to your purpose. People who understand your depth. People who value your heart. People whose presence aligns with God's plan for your life. Until that time, embrace your solitude. It is not an empty room. It is a sacred chamber. It is not a punishment. It is a preparation. It is not a curse, it is a calling. God separates the chosen not to diminish them, but to elevate them. And the day will come when the world will understand why you walked alone for so long. And when a chosen one finally begins to realize that their loneliness is not a flaw, but a divine signal. Something shifts inside them. They stop asking, "Why does nobody stand with me?" and begin declaring, "God is standing with me, and that is enough." This shift is not a small adjustment, it is a spiritual awakening. It is the moment when the soul understands that separation is not abandonment, but elevation. It is when the heart realizes that what felt like isolation was actually insulation. God keeping you safe from what would have destroyed you if it had access to you too early. There are seasons in life when God closes every door around you, not because there is no place for you in the world, but because He wants you to step through the door that only He can open. And in that season, you may look around and see no friends, no supporters, no companions. But God does not want you dependent on the validation of people. He wants you anchored in His validation alone. When God removes the crowd, He is teaching you to walk by conviction, not applause. When He removes support, He is teaching you to stand by faith, not comfort. When He removes companionship, He is teaching you that your purpose must not be rooted in relationships, but in His command. Many chosen ones wonder why God allows them to experience betrayal or abandonment early in life. But these experiences are not accidents. They are part of divine training. The chosen ones learn early that people can change, but God remains constant. They learn early that humans can fail you, but God never does. They learn early that attachment can be dangerous when it is placed in the wrong hands. So God allows heartbreak not to punish you, but to sharpen your discernment. He allows disappointment to strengthen your spiritual backbone. He allows loneliness to increase your dependency on Him. Every tear you shed in solitude becomes a seed that God waters, preparing you for a future harvest. There is a quiet authority that forms in the chosen ones who walk alone. They do not need to speak loudly. God makes their presence felt. They do not need to fight for recognition. God shines a light on them at the right time. They do not need to chase acceptance. God places them where they are meant to be. This inner authority is not developed in crowds. It is born in solitude. It is shaped in silence. It is forged in the unseen places where only God watches. And when the time comes, that authority becomes the very thing that empowers you to lead, influence, and uplift others. God often removes friends from the chosen ones because He does not want their identity in the hands of others. If too many people had access to your life, you would become a reflection of their expectations instead of God's vision. God does not want you molded by opinions, preferences, or cultural pressures. He wants you shaped by divine purpose. So He isolates you to preserve your authenticity. He isolates you to protect your originality. He isolates you to ensure that when you step into your assignment, you do so as a person who is fully guided, strengthened, and purified by Him alone. And let me tell you something powerful. The chosen ones often have emotional depth that most people are not capable of reciprocating. You feel with intensity, you love with purity, you care with sincerity. You notice the smallest shifts in energy, the subtlest changes in tone, the hidden intentions behind action. This depth is a gift from God, but it is also a burden around people who cannot meet you at that level. Shallow hearts cannot hold the weight of a deep soul. So God ensures that you are surrounded by very few, sometimes by none at all, so that your heart remains protected from misunderstanding and misuse. Chosen ones also possess a spiritual awareness that makes them see through the layers of people. You cannot be easily deceived. You cannot be easily manipulated. God has placed a spiritual instinct inside you, an internal alarm system that warns you when someone's intentions do not match their actions. This discernment sets you apart. It makes you cautious. It makes you selective. And because you cannot pretend not to see the truth, you cannot keep people close once you sense their spirit is not aligned with God's path for you. Thus, many relationships end before they begin, not because you lack warmth, but because God has sharpened your discernment. There is another mystery. Chosen ones often outgrow people faster than they realize. You evolve quickly because God is constantly refining you, while others are comfortable remaining the same. You keep rising, growing, learning, and transforming. So friendships built at one stage of your life cannot survive the next. People who knew you yesterday may not fit into who you are becoming tomorrow, and God will not allow relationships that belong to your past to follow you into your future. He closes doors gently, even painfully, to protect your destiny. Sometimes your isolation is not because others abandoned you, but because God separated you to prevent you from becoming like them. If you stayed in the wrong circles, their habits would corrupt your spirit. Their goals would weaken your discipline. Their confusion would cloud your clarity. So God removes you from environments where you cannot grow. He disconnects you from people who cannot elevate. He distances you from influences that cannot support your calling. That distance is not rejection, it is divine redirection. Chosen ones also feel deeply for the world around them. They sense the spiritual heaviness of environments. They feel the turmoil in other people's hearts. They pick up on the emotional storms that others hide. This level of sensitivity requires space, silence, and solitude to process. Crowds overwhelm you. Loud environments drain you. Constant interaction exhausts you. So God limits the number of people around you, not because something is wrong with you, but because your spiritual system operates differently. You are built to hear Him clearly, and clarity requires quiet. Some chosen ones are separated so they can break generational patterns. You cannot carry out God's assignment while entangled with the same cycles that trap those before you. You must be set apart to think differently, act differently, speak differently, and live differently. Your solitude is part of the cleansing. It is part of the rewriting. It is part of the rebuilding. God is using your separation to break chains that ran through your family for years. That alone requires a level of emotional and spiritual independence that friendship cannot always support. And when you look at your life, you'll notice something remarkable. Every time you tried to connect with the wrong people, God created a disruption. Conversations faded. Interest died. Circumstances shifted. Distance increased. Plans fell apart. Not because you were unworthy of companionship, but because those connections were not aligned with your calling. God interfered for your protection. God blocked it for your elevation. God ended it for your transformation. There are seasons where chosen ones cry out to God, asking why the path must feel so heavy, why the silence must feel so loud, why the solitude must feel so endless. But even in those tears, God is working. He is building patience. He is shaping endurance. He is strengthening your emotional spine. He is deepening your trust. He is teaching you to walk with Him, even when the road feels empty And when you finally emerge from that season, you will discover that your solitude was not a valley, it was a mountain. You were not descending, you were ascending. God was lifting you to a place where few could follow. Chosen ones do not have many friends because their life is not built for the approval of people. Their life is built for the purpose of God. And purpose requires clarity, discipline, focus, and unwavering dedication. God does not place heavy callings on crowded shoulders. He places them on those willing to walk alone with Him. Even when the world does not understand, your solitude is a sign of your strength. Your isolation is proof of your preparation. Your lack of friends is evidence that God is doing something extraordinary within you, something that cannot be done in the presence of too many. And one day, when you look back, you will realize that every person God removed, every connection that ended, every moment you sat alone, every silent night, every tear shed in solitude was part of a divine strategy. God was not taking people away. He was taking you deeper. God was not leaving you alone. He was aligning you with purpose. God was not withholding relationships. He was preparing you for destiny. And only then will you see that the path of the chosen is not the path of the many, but the path of the few, and the path of the deeply guided. And now, as you stand at this point in your journey, hear this truth with the fullness of your spirit. You were not called to fit in. You were called to rise. You were not chosen to blend with the multitudes. You were chosen to walk the narrow path that leads to purpose. If your life feels quiet, if your circle feels empty, if your nights feel long, understand God is not ignoring you. God is positioning you. God separates before He elevates. God isolates before He illuminates. God empties your surroundings so He can fill your spirit. When the crowd disappears, His voice becomes clearer. When the friends walk away, His nearness becomes stronger. When the world grows silent, His direction becomes unmistakable. Do not be discouraged by the loneliness you face. It is not a punishment. It is a preparation. It is not rejection. It is refinement. God is shaping your mind, strengthening your character, cleansing your heart, and building a foundation inside you that no betrayal, no jealousy, no storm, no enemy can ever destroy. You may feel like you are walking this road alone, but God walks with you. You may feel unseen by people, but you are deeply seen by God. You may feel misunderstood, but God understands every thought, every tear, and every hidden battle. Chosen ones are not defined by how many people stand beside them. They are defined by how deeply God stands within them. Your power does not come from numbers. It comes from the one who never leaves your side. Your worth does not come from being accepted by people. It comes from being selected by God. If God has pulled you away from certain individuals, thank Him. If God has closed certain doors, trust Him. If God has removed you from certain environments, praise Him. He is protecting your destiny. He is guarding your path. He is shielding your spirit. So walk with courage, stand with strength, move with conviction. The road may be narrow, but it leads to greatness. The season may be lonely, but it leads to purpose. The silence may feel heavy, but it leads to revelation. Keep your heart steady. Keep your faith unshaken. Keep your spirit anchored. God is preparing something so profound, so precise, so powerful that later you will look back and say, if those people had stayed, I would have never discovered who I truly am in God. Chosen one, lift your head. You are not abandoned. You are not forgotten. You are not overlooked. You are being shaped by the hands of God Himself. And anything shaped by God cannot be stopped by the world. Walk forward with the fire of faith, the strength of purpose, and the confidence of someone who knows that the greatest companionship in this life is the presence of God.